Hey everybody, Cannon here with more technologies. In this video, we are going to be talking about if statements. If statements are a powerful tool in programming. Before we get into how they work and how to write them, let's start to understand why we would need something like an if statement. Let's pretend that we've got a robot. It's got its little robot eyes, and it's got some wheels. And this robot is supposed to be driving around a room. So we got this big old room, and the robot's just driving around. But what if there's a big rock in the path? You wouldn't want the robot to just run into it, right? But how would you tell a robot with a program to avoid the rock? If we were just telling the robot to drive forward or drive left or drive right, it wouldn't know whenever it sees a rock. You've got to have something that recognizes that there's a rock or something in the path, and then does something about it. And that's where if statements come in. So if we were to make this Roomba robot's pseudocode, it would look a little bit something like, we're just gonna go forward, but if you see something in the way, we would turn around, kind of like a Roomba does. So what we're going to talk about today is what allows you to write this part of the code. If you see something, do something else. So let's get out of Microsoft Paint and actually get into the code. So I've just got a basic Arduino sketch in Arduino Create here. And the first thing I'm going to do is type serial.begin 9600. This is just allowing us to print to the serial monitor, which will help us understand this. So now I'm going to write if 5 is less than 10, serial.println 5 is less than 10. So I've got that, and I'm going to go ahead and upload that to my robot. So now go ahead and guess what you think it'll print out. I'm going to go to the monitor. Sometimes you got to give it a second. Just go ahead and refresh. So there we go. If I check the monitor, it prints out 5 less than 10, which makes sense. So let's talk about what the computer just did there. So first, the Arduino's going through the program, and it sees if 5 is less than 10. And the first thing it looks at is the word if. It knows there's going to be some kind of conditional, and it looks inside of these parentheses. And basically, it's saying if whatever's inside these parentheses is true, do this. If it's not true, ignore it and just keep going. So let's see if it'll do that. And let's change this to something that isn't true. So let's go ahead and say if 5 is greater than 10. So we know that's not true. And let's see if the robot does. And it prints out, I just kept going. And that's because it just skips whatever's in here if this isn't true. Now, in this case, we're hard coding numbers in here, so the robot's always going to make the same output. But in the case of the Roomba robot, like we talked about, we want it to do different things based on the environment. And if we're going to make a Roomba robot, we'd probably want that to be whether or not something's in front of it. So in the last tutorial, we talked about using bot.readDistance. Now, I don't have the library set up in this code, so it wouldn't compile, but I could write bot.readDistance. If that is less than, let's say, 30 centimeters, do some code in here. Now, what if we wanted it to do something that was outside of this statement, if that makes sense? So in this case, if I just undo, I've got if 5 is greater than 10, let's just change that to less than 10. If it's less than 10, I want it to print out 5 is less than 10. If not, I want it to print out I just kept going. So I'm going to upload that. And here we go. It prints out both, which is kind of weird, right? We don't want that to happen. We want it to just say 5 is less than 10 if 5 is less than 10. And if not, we want it to print this, but it's doing both. And that's because the Arduino is reading this like instructions. Told it to start. You asked it to check, is 5 less than 10? It is, so it's going to run this code in here, and it does. And then it keeps going, and then it gets to this code that tells it to do this. So what if we wanted to do it where it would either do, if this was true or false, it would either do this thing or another thing. The thing we use is called else. So we can just type in else, and then add more curly brackets. And this doesn't have to be in line like this. You could do it right here, however you want. You'll just commonly see it right here because it's easier. So now I'm going to say serial.println 5 is not less than 10. Oh, I just realized there's a spelling error. So now, if we test this code... Oh, I misspelled else. Else, there we go. That happens. So something to keep in mind. Really make sure that you have your curly braces here. If you don't, if you deleted one, it will complain. So definitely make sure you have the curly braces. So yeah, so if you look here, you notice it says 5 is less than 10 because this is this way. If we made it the other direction, saying 5 is greater than 10, which is false, it will print the other one. And there we go. 5 is not less than 10. So this could be really useful in telling your robot to drive. And this is something that's going to become more useful when we introduce another concept called variables in a little bit. But for now, just know that this is how you can use if and else